Welcome everybody. Be turning it over to Paul and JinJing for Tour de Canvas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tour de Canvas. Today, we will give you a high-level overview of Canvas data. We will then walk you around a gallery of some visualization that we have created using the Canvas data. Through the gallery tour, we hope to show you some of the most useful data in Canvas. We have put together some resources at the end, and we're happy to share this whole slide deck with the data community, so you don't need to take any notes. For those of you who are not familiar with Canvas, it's a learning management system that ASU used since the 2018 to 2019 academic year. On the left chart, you can see starting from fall 2018, more and more ASU classes started to use Canvas. Now, more than 80% of ASU classes have a Canvas course shell in Canvas. That means more than 90% of enrolled students use Canvas for at least some of their learning activities. So there's a lot of student learning and assessment data in Canvas. In this presentation, you will learn what Canvas data are available in the data warehouse, where you can find them, and some use cases and useful Canvas fields. And after the presentation, we'd love to hear from you and see what else would you like to use Canvas data for. So after the presentation, feel free to Slack us or email us if you have any idea of how to use Canvas data. Next, Paul will give you an overview of Canvas data.
All right. So before we actually begin the gallery show, we wanted to show give a quick overview of the Canvas data actually in the warehouse. And we wanted to show where the data is located and quickly explain the different types of Canvas data. This next piece may be helpful for analysts and developers who want to explore the data themselves, whereas the gallery itself is more visuals on what we've actually done with the data. This visual here, what you're seeing is the entirety of this is our Redshift data warehouse. This is where our data lives. Each square is a schema. If you don't know what that means, just a schema, think of it as a collection of data objects. So the size of each of these schemas or squares is based on the number of tables within the schema. And then these maroon colored schemas here, these collection of data objects are the schemas that contain Canvas data. So for this presentation, we'll actually be focusing on ASU Learning. This is where our main instance of Canvas data is stored. Over here in continuing education, that's CPE, so continuing professional education data. So we'll, again, like I said, we'll be focusing on ASU Learning. So we're gonna take a look at a deeper dive into that table. What we can see is within ASU Learning, there are 169 total tables. Of those tables, 103 are Canvas and Canvas Crosswalk. By crosswalk, I mean there's Canvas data and then there's ASU's data, where we have information about ASU's ecosystem of students and faculty and those types of things, staff. So the crosswalk tables just allow you to link the ASU's data to the Canvas data. And then there's also 66 other tables, mostly edX tables that we won't really be talking about today. All right, so we're going to zoom into ASU Learning one more time. And within ASU Learning, we have different types of Canvas data. There is Caliper, and if you look over here at this large square that's Cal Canvas, this is a single table. This table has over 5 billion, or about 5 billion rows of data, and it's refreshed daily. So with this table, think of it as tracking activity. And what I mean by activity is think of it as like clicks. That's an easier way to parse that out. So a student clicked on a syllabus, they clicked on a module. It's essentially activities of a user did something at a certain time in a certain course. And again, not all activities happen in a course, but so the other tables, the majority of the tables that we have we call them CVS underscore, and that's essentially because they're Canvas data tables. We call them CVS underscore because they all start with the CVS underscore. So you can see there's CVS underscore user dim. And these tables can give us information about grades, submission details, assignment details, like what's the name of the assignment, those types of things. And it's refreshed approximately every 2 days. So it's not as refreshed as often as the caliper data. All right. So as a side note, JinJing and I use 16 Canvas tables to create the gallery that you're about to see. So without any further delay, we're going to actually get into the actual gallery. So with this first one, this first section is course design. We'll be showing 2 examples of how we leverage the Canvas data to uncover nuances amongst courses, stemming from the tools they use to how courses are structured. It's important to note that throughout this presentation, any student level data that you see has been de-identified to protect the privacy of our students and our learners. All right, so this first visual is something that we call the bubble dash. Each bubble here, think of it as a tool that's installed within Canvas. The size of the bubble is based on the number of courses. So the larger the bubble, the more courses it's installed in. The users of this dashboard, they can change the size, the bubble sizing to number of users or even number of clicks. And what this really helps with is, there's Canvas and there's a lot of tools that get installed, and this kind of starts bringing to light, some of those tools, such as we're going to look at HonorLock. HonorLock chose this one randomly. It is a proctoring tool. What we can see is when we select a tool, we can see the account that it's installed within. We can see a unique number of users, the number of clicks, as well as the number of courses in which that tool is being utilized or clicked. We can also see the URL that we're talking about. So like when we say HonorLock ASUO, we're actually talking about that specific URL. So anytime that URL gets clicked, we track that. And then again, we can tell you how many clicks, users, and courses there are. One other level that you can drill down within this specific view is, as you can see, we're still on HonorLock. We can see easily each row here is a Canvas course, and we can see it's sorted by number of clicks, and you can also see number of users on the left side. But more importantly, when in this tool, I can see that there's a lot of math classes that use this tool, which isn't surprising, right? But it's just nice to be able to see what courses are using what tool. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to JinJing to talk about course structure.
Thank you, Paul. Besides external tools, we can also get a glimpse of course structure by looking at the course modules. So in Canvas, a module is like a unit or a chapter, and each module may have multiple items, as you see here. So you might have some readings or videos to watch, then maybe join a discussion, and then do a unit assessment. And Canvas provides some module tables that I listed here. One thing I find interesting is the types of module items. So a module item may be a wiki page, which is basically a web page that the course designer or course instructor created, or it could be an attached file. For example, the teacher might simply attach an article in PDF file for the students to read. It could also be an assignment or a quiz or discussion topic, etc. So the module tables always tell you what course a module item is in. So from there, you can link the Canvas course ID to an ASU class in PeopleSoft. Here, I just randomly picked one college and then grab all the classes from that college, then map the percentages of each type of module items in their on-ground classes versus their online classes. If you look at the attachment percentage, you can see the on-ground classes use attachments way more than the online classes. So that tells us the on-ground classes and the online classes have somewhat different course designs. Canvas data can also give us some insights about student participation. For example, many courses use discussion forums, and in Canvas, a discussion thread has a topic, then entries or posts responding to that topic, and then entries responding to another entry. So that will be like entry with a parent entry. So in Canvas, the discussion thread can be a very nested thread. So the CVS discussion tables can tell us how students and teachers interact with each other in the discussion forums. The discussion data include the actual text of the discussion topic and entry, although in our database, it only gets the first 4,000 characters of the HTML codes in the discussion message. And then it also tells you who posted at what time for which class and which topic or parent entry a post is responding to. So this bar chart shows you the median number of discussion entries each student posted across various semesters. You can see in the summer of 2020 and fall 2020, the number skyrocketed. So I'm wondering if it has to do with most courses moving online during the pandemic, and people started to use Canvas as a space for discussion and interactions. And these two donut charts shows you different courses have different patterns of interaction. So in the course on the left side, you can see the discussions are used mostly by the teacher or TAs to respond to the students. But in the course on the right side, the discussions are used mostly by students to interact with each other. So a lot of peer learning or peer interaction is happening in course 2 compared to course 1. One last thing about the discussion table, it tells you, give you a timestamp of discussion post. So this heat map is about when students post on the discussion board. You can see Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. is when students post the most. Sunday evenings from 8 p.m. to midnight is also a very busy time on the discussion board. And Saturdays are the quietest day of the week, and also Friday night too. Now I'm going to turn it over to Paul. He will show you how students perform using caliper data.
Okay, so another way that we can view participation is by summarizing a student's activity within the LMS, within Canvas. This view is a dashboard that student-facing support staff use when they're talking with students. So that student support staff can be anywhere from success coaches in Ed Plus to success coordinators over in University College and many more. So what we can actually see in this view here is the activity. When I say Canvas activity, that's summed into logins, clicks, and minutes. And essentially, we don't know whether 459 minutes is good or bad, but what we can start doing is showing these metrics as for the student in a course. So for every student for each course, we can show their activity, and the advisors can compare that to everyone else in that same class. So the average line here. So we're comparing that blue bar to the orange line, and are they above or below that line? And again, these are all helpful data points for an advisor or an agent to ask the student open-ended questions and really just allow the student to explain kind of what's going on. So we can also see the last activity in a class, and then the current grade as well as the class average. So that's one way to also get at participation. And then staff can also drill down further into this assignment view, where we can see how a student is doing on an assignment versus the class average. Again, this is, the staff know, we're not saying, hey, how come you did 43.9 on, module 2, what's going on? But it's more so staff can use this to kind of game plan with students and look at the future assignments that they have coming up and say, hey, looks like you have a big 50-point assignment coming up, or not even that. Hey, what's your plan for this for the next couple of weeks? And then again, put it back on the student so that they can have those conversations. So there is that. And I'm going to turn it back over to JinJing to talk about performance.
So using Canvas data, we can get some timely performance data, such as students' current course grades and assignment grades. I listed some of the tables and fields we use over and over again to get real-time student performance data. The bar chart on the right is a dashboard I created for some program advisors in the nursing school. They can use the chart to monitor the overall class performance of each course in their program. And then the advisors can zoom into each class and see the current performance of individual student in that class. For example, how many days since the student last logged in, what's the student's current course grade, how many missing assignments or late assignment does each student have. So all these individual students metrics are compared against the rest of the class. So the program advisor can use this data to catch at-risk students, hopefully before it's too late.
So this final visual shows a dashboard that we refer to as the course scatter dash. So WP Carey has retention specialists who are focused on supporting students as they navigate through foundational courses such as Econ 211 and Econ 212. Each triangle on this scatter plot is, think of it as a student, and the position of each student is based on their grade, which is here on the x-axis, and that's the grade as the course goes on. And then the y-axis is the relative time in Canvas, where this orange line represents the class average, right? So students in the upper right-hand side of the region, like this student over here, they're making, above a 90%, and they're more than 6 times the class average. So they're, in Canvas quite a bit and essentially making a good grade, which is great. So the retention team at WP Carey, they can set a range, and let's say, hey, I want to know all of my WP Carey students who are, let's say, making less than a 70 and then spending less than the average amount of time in Canvas, right? So essentially students in this region here. Well, what they can do is get that list of students, which is here, and export all of that to a spreadsheet, and then they can start making contact that way. So here are some references, as JinJing said that we would have at the end. There's Calibra with some definitions. There's the Canvas data portal, which is Canvas's documentation for the CDS_ tables. And then there's live events and Caliper documentation here. And like JinJing said, just let us know if you have any feedback, any questions that we can help you with, and we're happy to help. That was it. Thank you. And I think we might be a little. Oh, we have 2 minutes to go. So if there's any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and we'll help out.
Thanks. There are a few questions in chat right now.
Yeah, it looks so. Yeah, we will we'll make the PowerPoint available and go back to the resources. Oops, didn't mean to go that way. Sorry, we're reading through. Yeah, Canvas Commons has come up before, and when we've looked into the Commons, I believe right now there's like a very basic number of downloads, and whether it's favorited or something like that. But it's very minimal. And when we've looked into trying to see what other information we can get out of Canvas Commons, there really hasn't been much in the data that we have here. That'll probably be something that Canvas needs to further develop on their end so that we can get more data, but definitely something we've been asked before.
Yes, we can segment the data by student demographics. So their classes, their majors, and some other demographic information the client would like us to use. And we have another question about getting access to the deck. Yes, we will share the deck, and I believe the video will be shared as well later.
Yeah, the recording should be put up on the data conference site shortly.
Thank you. And then Tammy has a questions about library tutorials or oh yeah, okay, thank you. Could you share the Canvas API link? It's in the resources, we can share later. Discussion analysis. Yeah, but the time definitely has to do with when the discussion post is due.
And just a comment on the Canvas API, because it was referenced a couple of times here. Canvas API is different from the Canvas data that's in the warehouse. It's some of the same data, but Canvas has different ways of getting at data. So there are APIs that folks at ASU do use, But then there's Canvas data, which is what Paul and JinJing shared, which is a different tool set, same data in the back end. So I'm assuming you guys are going to share either the Calibra link or the hosted data Canvas link.
Yes.
Yeah,
we will
show.
share both of those. And the only reason that the API, so the API link is the only one from Canvas that has caliper information, which is again that activity. So the only reason I would use that is to just look for, again, caliper payload information, but not the actual APIs themselves.
And Delia has
Delia has a question about whether we can look at Canvas participation by student demographics. Yes, so all the Canvas users can be linked to PeopleSoft data, so we know student population, and all the Canvas course shell can be linked to PeopleSoft class data, so we know which Canvas course is what classes, what ASU classes are.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending. And like I said, JinJing and I are available on Slack if you need us.